Welcome to the Shift List. My name is Matt, and this is the Toyota RAV4 in Prime, or as you could say, plug-in hybrid edition. Now the RAV4 is one of the best-selling cars, and yet you go to Car and Driver and it's ranked 11th in the segment. So they're suggesting that there's 10 better cars than this? Well, today I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about this RAV4 Prime so you can make your own decision. Let's get into it. Now, first things first, we'll talk about the flavors that you can get a RAV4. Now, there's a bunch, actually. You can get a normal gas RAV4, you can get a hybrid RAV4, you can get this Prime or plug-in hybrid. It'll get you a little bit of fully electric driving range. And then there isn't, I guess, technically an EV RAV4. Toyota came out with one, I think, in like 2007, but they discontinued that. But if you want an EV around this size, you'd look at the BZ4X, but don't buy that, trust me. So what's under the hood of the Prime then? Well, it's the same 2.5 naturally aspirated four-cylinder that you'd be familiar with from other RAV4s. But here it has a bigger 18.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack for the hybrid system. Between the gas motor and the electrical components, you're good for 302 horsepower and some big number in torque that neanderthals like myself don't really totally understand or can make sense of. But what that translates to is 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. So when this thing came out, and I believe it was 2021, this was the second fastest Toyota in the umbrella behind only the 6-cylinder Supra. It was even faster than the 4-cylinder Supra, so that is pretty cool. But most importantly, it'll do 42 miles of that fully electric range, and that is probably enough to get you to work and maybe even back. Just in hybrid mode, if you're not going to cruise on EV, this thing will still do 38 mpg, so that is pretty good, even with the battery quote-unquote flat. Now we're going to talk PHEV or plug-in hybrid things. Now it's interesting. You've got your charge door on the passenger side. You saw that I can just open it myself, but you go to the gas door over here and you have to open that from the cabin. But let's talk about the battery. I think I mentioned 18.1 kilowatt hours. Now compare that to a fully electric, one of our favorites, the Ioniq 5. That's doing about 76 kilowatt hours, so a much smaller battery, but still results in that 42 miles of great usable daily range. Of course, obviously, if you run out of that range, this thing will function as a hybrid, so it's still really efficient. You're kind of getting the best of both worlds. But importantly, this can be charged on a level 1, just a normal house outlet, in 12 hours. So you come home from work, the gym, the grocery store, whatever, you plug in, you're probably good to go in the morning. Now me, personally, I'm pretty risk averse, so I probably would get a level 2 charger, and I have done. I bought an Emporia, and that'll charge this thing in 2.5 hours. So I for sure am gonna leave the house every time with a full battery. And if you're interested in something like an Emporia charger, check the link in the description below and I can save you some money on one of those. But with some charge left in the battery, you're gonna be good for 94 mpge, or miles per gallon equivalent of electric power, and that is pretty good. But then we'll talk about the drivetrain. Now power goes from the front through an eCVT. It'll simulate shifts a little bit, but it is a CVT. And the XSE that we have here, this is the top RAV4 Prime, that'll get you paddles, which will kind of synthesize gear changes, but my guess is you're probably going to leave that alone, although it does have an off-road purpose, which we can talk about later. But it also gets all-wheel drive as standard for the Primes. What that means is there's not a physical linkage from the front drivetrain to the rear. It's just an electric module to bring in power to those rear wheels. So that's going to maximize fuel efficiency, it's going to cut down on mechanical things, and it'll always have power. Even when the battery is flat, you're still going to have reserve that will power that if you run into, I don't know, bad weather like this. But let's talk about looks. Now this thing came out in 2021. It got a facelift, I believe, last year for 23. So the looks aren't hugely different than what you'd see from a normal RAV4. And the Prime is pretty subtle. There's only a couple things that make it different. But let's talk about the look in general. You've got the skyscraper silver metallic paint, whatever it's called. Interestingly though, you see all the new Toyotas coming out, they don't have the blue surround for the hybrid component. It's just kind of implied. They put a little pearl on the back end of the car, but this is an older quote-unquote model, so it still gets the blue surround. I kind of like the blue surround. I'm a little partial to it. You've got this dark chrome or Vader chrome surrounding the grille. I believe that is a Prime exclusive, and of course blacked out diamond grille. You do have vertical LED running lights on your XSE, and of course LED runners and full LED headlights. I believe you get auto high beams as standard here as well. You do have some silver accented front splitter. It's an aggressive look for this thing. But we come around the side and check out the wheels here. We have 19-inch wheels. These are specific to the XSE. The SEs are gonna have a different wheel design, but look at this. The XSEs also get red shock bodies. That's kind of interesting. And of course, everybody has to have wheel cladding, but here on the Prime, very luxe, you get body color, gloss black. And then this is one of the only ways that you can tell that this is the Prime. You've got a plug-in hybrid badge here, and then a Prime badge on the back. Otherwise, you wouldn't really be able to tell. Another giveaway for the XSE is the fact that you can get a two-tone paint option. So you can get a black roof with a little chrome accenting. You also get these roof rails, I believe, as part of a package. Black wing mirrors, of course, touch-sensitive door handles, not just on the front, but on the back as well. Now that is some luck stuff you don't even see from everything. Zooming out, we'll take a look at the profile. It's gonna be very classic RAV4, maximizing headroom, maximizing cargo space. It's not a slopey roof back, but then you come in, interesting place to put the all-wheel drive badge on the bottom of the rear passenger door. It's on both sides, but of course we've got those 19s on the back. Again, driver's side is for the gas, and then we'll take a look from the back angle. It's a, I guess, more rugged design than you'd get from like a CX-5 or a CR-V, but it is getting a little bit long in the tooth. It's ready for a refresh. LEDs, I believe this is incandescent, your turn signal. Of course, blue again. And then this is the only other place that's gonna be a giveaway that you got the plug-in hybrid. And then your trim over here, and then dual exhaust out back. And while we're back here, let's talk about towing. Now, interestingly, you get a RAV4 hybrid, the non-Prime, and you're gonna max out at 1,750 pounds of capacity. This Prime, with its added power and torque, gets you 2,500 pounds, so another 750 pounds from the normal hybrid. Now that is pretty powerful, and I believe pretty close to top of the segment, aside from something like maybe a Mazda CX-5 or CX-50 with the turbo. We're gonna try the kick gesture. I never get this to work on really any car. Oh, I did it. I can't believe I've done it. Thank you, RAV4. You make me feel validated. But here's something that's interesting. You have an unlock, or you have a power tailgate, obviously, but a lot of cars have it on this side of the latch, and they have a close and lock button. This just has the close. So just something to be aware of. But here you have a huge trunk. It is slightly smaller than you get in a normal RAV4 or even a RAV4 hybrid, but it's still pretty big. 33.5 cubic feet, finds it on the bigger end of the spectrum. With these rear seats down, which don't fold from the back, but with them down, you're gonna look at about 70 cubic feet of space. That's about 5 or 6 cubic feet less than something like a CR-V hybrid, but again, this has the bigger battery, so you're getting that electric range. JBL subwoofer under here, if I can grab the tab, under here, you do have a full-size spare, and of course your mobile charging kit. And then you also have a couple chargers back here, normal 12 volt and then a 120 volt outlet, normal house style. So this is pretty good. Of course, privacy cover, and it is a pretty practical trunk back here. And then we'll check out the back seat. I am gonna take a second to point out, the doors don't open completely 90 degrees like we did have in the CX-5. Still pretty practical, it's still easy to get things in and out of here. But we do have some red contrast stitching, rubberized door handle. A lot of this stuff is rubberized because it's easier to grab, it's gonna be more durable and that sort of thing. No window shades, I don't really expect that, but we'll hop in. I'm 6'1", plenty of knee room, and even with the pano roof, plenty of headroom. It's got pano roof, by the way, I believe this is part of a package, but you do have vents back here. You've got dual, I believe they're USB-Cs. Yep, sure are. You've got dual map pockets. And of course, you've got some cup holders. And if that wasn't enough, you do have heated rear seats back here, which is proper luxury stuff. I think this is kind of funny. This kind of goes with the rubber accenting we'll see in the front, but the JBL sounds pretty good. Here's another look at the rear seats. Very big, very practical, and they even recline a little bit, as you can see here. And of course, from there, we'll check out the front seats. They're very similar. Again, red accenting kind of stitched into here, red accenting all the way through the seats. They're heated 3-level, they're cooled 3-level, which is very nice and luxe. You also have 2-person memory seat, which is very good. And then the interesting thing is this is the driver's seat. I can sit, if I could just get like an inch lower, it would be perfect, but it's still pretty good. And then talking about the interior design as a whole, it is showing its age a little bit. A lot of things have been newly updated with new generations, most specifically its main competitor, the CR-V. But I think it still looks nice and clean. With the refresh, we got a bigger screen, and we'll talk more about tech in a minute, but I want to just talk about the overall practicality that we get here. We talked about kind of the rubberized stuff that you get with the door handles. You've also got the Toyota family cavern, which is kind of this nice dash cubby. That's not a real thing, by the way, that's just what I've been calling it, but it's like got a rubberized floor. So we were in the Hyundai Kona the other week and it had something like that in the dash, but it wasn't rubberized, so things would slide around and make a bunch of noise. This is more thoughtfully done. You also get one on the other side of the driver's seat, or excuse me, the steering wheel. So that is just nice and thoughtful. There's storage everywhere. The door bins are huge. You can fit stuff. It just makes sense, and it's well designed, and it's intentioned for people to actually live in and drive every day. And we're going to talk about technology. We're going to start with a head-up display. I hope you can kind of see it. I'm sorry it's flashing. It's not actually doing that. But you do have a big, I think it said 10-inch head-up display. It's got color in it, and it's hard to see, but it does have kind of like a power, I guess, tracker. So you can see when you're charging, when you're deploying power, when you're in eco mode. You've got your status for your lane keep and all the fun stuff that you use on the road. You do have a massive 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster. This is pretty cool. I like this. Really, no one else in the segment is bringing something like this, not Mazda, not Honda. Interestingly, on the Honda front, you can get a full digital cluster in your Civic, but not in your CR-V. But you've got drive modes that kind of change it a little bit, but they have the longest animations in history. Okay, I'm in sport. It's gonna keep me in this screen to make sure that I know that I'm in sport. And it doesn't really change much. You've got a little red horizon line there, and then you can kind of change the look a tiny bit with just different information, but it's not wildly customizable, but I think it's nice to have the option of a digital instrument cluster. And then from there we get to the main event. This is the thing that got updated last year. 10.5-inch infotainment screen, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. It's quick, it makes sense, it's easy to use. Toyota's new connected services thing is pretty good. There's really not a lot of frills or gimmicks in here, but everything just works pretty well. So I'm not gonna bother with setting it up here, but it is nice, trust me. You throw it into reverse, one of the only ones, again, I guess, rather than the CR-V, you do get a 360 camera here, which is quite nice. You also get the little stupid egg view, which does this little 360 scan. Again, I don't know why they do this, but you can even change the color to match. I want the skyscraper metallic, although that blue looks pretty cool. And then you can see, whoop, we go into reverse. Now all of a sudden our car is silver. So I guess that's kind of cool. You do have a digital rear view mirror, which I think is really nice, especially if you're gonna load stuff up in the back, take long trips, things are gonna block the mirror. It's nice to have that. You've also got a wireless charger that you can throw your phone in here and it'll tell you the status of it right there. It is also rubberized so it doesn't slide around. It actually works pretty well. And then you do have the 11-speaker upgraded JBL system. The base system is 6 speakers, but this JBL is, I mean, it's not gonna be the Mark Levinson like in the Lexus, but it's pretty good. And then on the right hand of your steering wheel, you do have the Toyota Safety Sense 2.5 Plus, and this is very good. This and the Hyundai system, they're pretty close. It does a great job of keeping you in your lane. You do have to kind of rest your hand or shake the wheel every now and then, but it does a great job with the adaptive cruise, the lane tracing or active lane keeping. So this is a very good system that's worked reliably in pretty much all of the Toyotas that we've tested. I will say the unibody stuff like the RAV4 and the Highlander and the Grand Highlander works a little bit better than something in like the Tundra or the Sequoia or more truck-based stuff. So this is a system I'm perfectly happy with. And I want to talk about drive modes for a second. Now I hope you can see this, but the dial actually changes color. So we're in Eco now, I push it in, now it's blue. To the right, that's red, that's sport, of course, but you also have this trail mode. This is kind of your off-road setting. It'll put you back into normal, and then it'll just show trail up there. This is kind of working as your rear all-wheel drive is going to work as a limited slip differential. So if you've got one wheel in the air and another one on the ground, it's going to like break that outside wheel that's in the air to send power to the wheel on the ground to get you through whatever obstacle you're getting through. So I think that is pretty nice. Of course, it totally changes how power is going to go to the car, but you also have these buttons here. You've got auto EV HVs, that's auto electric vehicle, auto hybrid vehicle. So this is just kind of nice to let the car figure out what the best and most efficient way to drive down the road is. But let's say you want to take control of it on your own. You can manually select hybrid or electric. And if you want to put it in charge mode, it'll just run the gas and then use things like braking and different momentum things to recharge the battery. That's going to be the least efficient way to drive it. I've left it in auto and it's pretty much been perfect the entire time. It defaults to EV until you get low on range and then it'll put you in hybrid, which of course is what I would do to maximize my fuel economy. But it's also got something working a little bit in the background. It's called predictive efficient driving. And basically what it does is over time, it kind of remembers the routes and the roads that you take, and it'll optimize the deployment of the electric power and the recuperation of electric power. So if it knows that you have a hill coming, it'll save up that electric power and torque and use that on the hill to go up. So you're not using so much gas to go up the steep part, and then you can kind of recoup as you're coming down with some regen. And then before we go for a drive, there's just a handful of little things that I think we should cover here. Like for one, you get this package, I think it's called the weather package or something, but it gets you a couple things. It gets you these windshield de-icers, which is fantastic to have in, I don't know, Milwaukee in January would be a great place to have it. It also gets you the heated rear seats. It's just the outboards, it's not the middle, but I think it's fine. And then it also gets you your heated steering wheel. We mentioned it on the exterior walk around, but I do like the fact that the RAV4 still gets you the classic blue hybrid designation on your logo. There's also a button on the key, you can see here, it says hold AC. Now it's not gonna do anything today because I don't want the heat to go on, but if you hold this, it'll precondition the cabin with air conditioning if you're on a hot day. So if you live in a hot climate or if it's July here, then that would be a nice thing to have. And again, I think it's kind of weird that the shock towers are painted red here. And the last thing we'll talk about before we go for a drive here is price. Now, a normal RAV4 starts at $28,675 for 2024. You go up to the hybrid, it's a couple grand, $31,725. But if you want to jump up to the primes here with the fully electric capability for about 42 miles of range, you're gonna jump up $12,000 to $43,440. The XSE, the trim that we have here, $47,310. And this thing, as tested with everything on it and destination, comes in at $51,300. And that's a lot of money, but you're getting a great car here. So let's get the key, get behind the wheel, and go for a drive. We're in sport mode, HV mode. Power. This thing is fast. Man, I mean, it's a RAV4 at the end of the day, but it is fast. So like 302 horsepower, let's say mid 300s, maybe 400 even pound-feet of torque. I don't know, I'm just making up numbers. But what matters is 0 to 60 in like the mid 5 seconds. I mean, that is proper quick, and it feels it. It's electric torque, it's instant, it's instantaneous, no matter what gear, what rev. It's just good. Now we'll come into this because this is the XSE, so it gets the sporty suspension out back. On the brakes, recharging, tip in, power. I mean, I'm not at the ragged edge or the limit of this thing, but it handles. It handles pretty well. This is a RAV4, it handles well. Yeah, let's talk about a couple things. The behind the wheel experience. Now I'm gonna be honest, I've driven like every possible variation of RAV4. This is the best one, for sure. You get the best, you get the worst of both worlds, you know, with maintaining a gas engine and then an electrical system, but you also get the best of both worlds. So in hybrid mode, in sport mode, you get all this power, all of the power, but you flick it back into eco mode, you go to EV, or auto HV EV, and now you're just in electric mode. And now you're just driving around, and now it's silent, it's quiet. The damping is smooth. The cabin isolation is great. I barely hear the pitter-patter of the rain here. I've got good safety suite stuff that's gonna keep me in my lane if I wanted to, and now it's just incredibly easy to drive. And even with it in eco, hold on. I shouldn't leave it in auto if I'm gonna floor it. But even in EV mode, floor it. You know, it's not gonna win drag races, but it still feels alive, it still feels quick, it still feels athletic. And I think that's kind of the nice thing here. In hybrid mode, you do get a little bit of the coarseness of the engine, but it's kind of nice to see the duality, to have both things. Because you can go straight from, oh, this is what, you know, we've always been used to, the rasp, the vibration, the noise of an engine, to all of a sudden immediately you can see back to back the night and day difference between having an electric powertrain and just the smoothness and the quietness and the civility and refinement of something like that. It is kind of just interesting to see the dichotomy. Now, some people will like it, some people won't, but I think the nice thing about something like this is it is just a RAV4. You know, the visibility is great, the ride is great. I'm gonna get yelled at for all that now, but at the end of the day, it is just a RAV4, so it's just easy to drive. It's just good. It's soft, it's comfy, but then you have the best of both worlds. I think the only thing, you know, we talk about where this thing stacks up in the segment and, you know, the CRV, CX-5, like, but my wife and I, we live in a CX-5 family, and I gotta say, like, this is better. The only thing that would stop me from getting this is just the price and the availability. I mean, I checked Auto Tempest, and there's three RAV4 Primes Between 2021 and 2024, there are 3 RAV4 Primes within 100 miles of me. That's it. And they do not depreciate. So, I mean, that's a good thing if you have one and you can get one. You know, you're not gonna lose your shirt when you go to sell it, but if you're trying to buy something used, you're not gonna have a lot to pick from, and it is still gonna be pretty expensive. So I believe there's incentives to getting these things new since it's a plug-in hybrid. So I think you can get some tax rebate stuff there. But if you can get one of these and you can, you know, swing the payments, brilliant car. Brilliant car. You can get a plug-in Tucson, you can get a plug-in Sportage, I believe, but I think of all the people making plug-in hybrids, I trust Toyota the most. And I really like this thing. So with that, thank you to Toyota for letting us have a go in this thing. If you're interested to see how this thing compares to the CR-V and the CX-5 and the CX-50 and all these other, you know, compact SUVs, make sure you check out our video on Downshift where we go through the best and the rest, and we'll see you there.